Živijo, tukaj je Anže, poslušate podcast Aparatus, kjer legitimni člani družbe povejo, kaj počnejo v življenju. Tole pa je 82. epizoda Aparatusa, v kateri sem govoril z Johnom Chidgeyjem, ki je elektroinženir iz Avstralije, sicer dela pa en zelo popularen podcast Pragmatic, tako da že spet en od njih, ki ne vem, zakaj so z mano govorili. Tako da danes ste veliko zvedeli o vodovodu, o volitvah v Avstraliji, pa kako točno izgleda Avstralija na zahodu, kjer baje ni nič, ne. Naprej začnemo, pa še enkrat ful hvala vsem, ki ste že podprli Aparatus. Vsak evro res ful prav pride, če bi pa to radi naredili, greste pa lahko na aparatus.si/podpri. Ful hvala. Evo, zdaj pa John.
Hello.
Hello.
How you doing, Anže?
Fine, I guess. It's after work here, so and you just got up, right? So.
Yeah, I got up at 4 o'clock, and plus I just recorded an episode of Pragmatic last night that finished only 4 hours ago. So I've only had about 4 hours sleep, but that's all good.
This is gonna go well then.
No, it's fine. I've got my coffee. It's gradually waking my brain up. It's fine.
Oh, so that's why I got a DM, like, I guess 4 hours ago from you. That's when you went to bed.
Yes, you got it. You absolutely right, yes.
See, we should talk about the whole... You actually started this with Jason Snell on Pragmatic, the whole, international aspect of, just working with people and stuff. Yeah. I guess you covered it from a different angle, but I think that's where we should start. Or should we go through my name first and then your last name? We should do that first, and then we'll go into it if that's okay.
Of course, that's fine. I've no problem at all. No problem. Yeah, I'm going to start out sounding a little bit groggy, and then I'll be fine.
Yeah, well, that's how I usually am when I record with Americans.
Yeah. Oh, great. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, because I usually have to either stay up really late or just wake up at insane hours, like you did today. So,
yeah, well, that's okay. That's fine. Okay, it's your show, so
Well, yeah, that's what people keep telling me. So.
Well, it is.
Okay, that is true. That is actually true. Mm-hmm. Say your name, and then I'll try and say your last name, and then we'll do mine. Okay, let's start.
You want me to say my name, and then you're going to copy what I say? Or you want to say... Oh, but that's just like cheating or something. You're supposed to have a go at my name first, and then I can say my name.
Oh, crap. Okay. Okay, you see. Okay, so I'm guessing, right? It's John Chidgey? Is that
that's
right?
it. Yes, that's right. That's very, very good. Well done.
Yeah, because we have the ch, obviously, right?
Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of easy, but the DG sound is always a crapshoot, basically.
Yeah, it's a bit weird.
Yeah, that's the weird one.
Yeah.
So, okay, now you go.
Okay. Keeping in mind I woke up 10 minutes ago. Here we go. Anže Tomic.
You see, well, yeah, okay. The Tomic part was fine, right?
Okay.
But like the way you said Anže, which is that's how you're supposed. Yeah, Anže. You see, you do the on thing, and that's a very French. And my name actually comes from the French name Anže, I think. Mm-hmm. Right,
yep.
But that's a different name. Right over here, we just say Anže.
Anže. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I did it again. Yeah, you're right. I did. Yeah, I think I just spent too much time in French Canada. So around in Quebec.
Oh, okay. That makes more sense now.
Yeah. I picked up too much of that twang. Because the funny thing was, when I was over there, they said, "Oh no, you pronounce your words very, very well," and I'm like, "Oh, thank you." I guess it didn't help that I could only speak about 3 or 4 dozen French words. Pronounce those ones okay, apparently.
Well, that's pretty badass actually, because French is my girlfriend actually studies French, and I know nothing basically. I just speak English. That's pretty well, barely, but I do. So
no, you do fine. You do very, very well.
Yeah, I'm slowly becoming the Eastern European guy. I'm that guy on podcasts, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's a good thing to be. Like you say, you sound a little bit like a Bond villain or something like that. So yeah, run with that. That's fine.
Yeah, or Bela Lugosi, which is what Merlin characterized my accent as. Do you know who Bela Lugosi is?
No. Tell me, because I have no idea.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty lucky that I actually knew who that guy was. He's a guy that played Dracula basically in the like in the 60s or 70s, something like that.
Okay.
He was in the Ed Wood movies. That's how I know about him. because I watched the Tim Burton Ed Wood movie with Johnny Depp.
Oh, yeah.
And in there was a character called Bela Lugosi, and that's how I found out. And then when Merlin said it, I said, oh, okay, well, that sort of makes sense.
Okay, yeah. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess my first question, 5 minutes in, again, is who are you and what do you do?
Okay, well, I'm John Chidgey, and I am an electrical engineer by degree, but I haven't done as much electrical engineering. I've done more instrumentation and control systems, and therefore the software that goes with it. So I've spent most of my career developing and industrial control system software. So I've done a little bit of electrical engineering in there as well, but predominantly that. In recent years, I've messed around with a little bit of blogging on my site Tech Distortion, and I've also played a little bit with podcasts. But they're all this stuff I sort of do as a hobby. My actual job job is I don't know. It's kind of funny, isn't it, how people do that differentiation? You know, it's like, hey, I've got a job, but it's a job job, as opposed to playing on podcasts, which is not a job job, but I mean, if you draw an income from it, technically it's a job, irrespective of whether you consider it to be a serious job or a hobby. It doesn't matter. And yet somehow we spell job job as to say, well, this is the serious one, guys, you know?
Yeah. Anyway. This is what I actually do. Everything else is, I guess some people are lucky enough to just, their job is the thing that, you know, the rest of us have as hobbies, I think.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah. So maybe, the JOB is then meant to denote the less desirable but higher income earning of the two.
Yeah, the normal one, basically.
Yeah, that's it. So you walk up to someone, they've got a better chance of understanding if you're an engineer. Well, I don't know if they do, or a podcaster, or at least they can understand you can make money from being an engineer. Anyway, I don't know.
Well, yeah, but explaining just the concept of what a podcast is, that's where it stops. Whereas, you know, if you just say engineer, you know, well, yeah. People at least have an idea of that.
People still think I drive a train or something, and I'm like, this is... I'm like, what? Seriously?
Okay, but what kind of software do you actually write? Like for what kind of, I guess, machinery, or what's the actual term? Just explain that, because I've heard you talk about different kinds of stuff, but the stuff you actually write software for, stuff like what? Okay,
well, okay. The thing to keep in mind is that computers and control systems sort of deviated in the 70s, such that you had have a little black. Well, it started as a little black box, literally a black box. Although I suppose they could have made it a pink box, but they decided to make it black anyway. So black box and a bunch of wires that go into, you know, a machine, and you know you'll have an actuator that you know makes something open and close or turn on and off. You'll have a motor that drives a conveyor belt, and that can be turned on and off all through commands from this thing called a programmable logic controller, or a PLC for short. And it has no monitor or screen or anything. Its sole job is you program it to, when this happens, do something else. And these things are designed to be, you know, very reliable and unlike let's say an operating system running, OS 10 or whatever version of Windows is the current one, 8.1 or whatever the hell it is. Those are far less stable. They're far much more complex, but then they also have a user interface, whereas these ones don't. The stuff that I work on generally doesn't. At least that's how it started. And then, of course, as computers sort of went along the way, they developed SCADA systems, and SCADA is just another name for it. It stands for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition, and that software runs on the computer, and it talks to the PLCs, and it can visualize the information in the PLC. So let's say the PLC is telling a conveyor belt to run. Well, you know, there's a single bit maybe in the memory, and the SCADA will look at that, and you can draw a pretty box on the screen, or maybe something that even, you know, has a visualization of a little conveyor belt turning if you really want to be fancy. And if that bit is 1, then you'll make that little thing, you know, look like it's moving. So you can use it to... The way I think of SCADA is it's a window into the memory of the PLC, a window into the system.
What's the actual, what the little black boxes run then?
Whatever you want.
What's the end program? Yeah, but the whatever you want part is the thing I'm interested in.
All right, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Think of it, anything that is automated is probably done by a PLC. So think about every car mass production plant in existence is pretty much run by a control system. And although there's a more advanced offshoot of the control system that's referred to as robotics, and that's much more specialized, but that's where you'll design a machine that has 3 axes of movement, and it'll have a special set of attachments on the head, like a welding head attachment, or it could just have a gripping attachment, and it's just meant to be more maneuverable, and it's able to do specific tasks that more mimic what the human hand can do. But essentially, it's still a control system. You'll tell it to move to this point in space, and you'll give it a time, and it has a certain amount of milliseconds to get to that position. And you've got to take into account the acceleration and make sure that you're not going to damage whatever it is that's on the end of it. So if you're like moving tiles, which is an application that I was involved in briefly. So if you're moving tiles from one location to another location, so you're stacking tiles on a stack, the amount of pressure that the vacuum is applying for the tile to grip onto the actual head unit of your robotic arm needs to be such that if you move too quickly, it doesn't fly off through the air. So that's just one example, but I mean, I've also worked on water and oil and gas pipelines, water pipelines, wastewater treatment plants.
Seriously?
Yeah, seriously.
Okay. That's wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's insane.
You put these control systems in anything that you need to control, and can be anything, and that's why I say it can be anything.
Yeah, okay, I get that, but an effing oil, that's just wow. Okay.
Yeah, I'm currently working in the oil and gas space, and it's an interesting space compared to the others, shall we say? So there's a lot of rules because, of course, if you get something wrong, things tend to explode. So you want to be more careful about that sort of thing.
Yeah, that was my point, sort of. Yeah, because gas and oil are flammable. I guess that's what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
When it goes wrong, it goes really badly wrong.
Yeah, that's wow. That's a level of pressure I've never had to deal with, I guess.
Well, the thing is that when it comes to projects of that size and that level of risk, there's a lot of review. So it never comes back to one individual. So you always have lots of checks and balances to make and procedures to go through to make sure, and this is what I mean by it's different, is that they take it extremely seriously, because if they don't, then it's the end of their business. Whereas in water and wastewater treatment, they're a little bit more relaxed. I mean, certainly, if you overdose on some of your dosing chemicals, like sodium hypochlorite or sulfuric acid, sure, your water's going to taste funny, but you're not going to kill anybody. And
right.
And every now and then, for example, I'd be diagnosing some problem, and it had dumped too much of one chemical into the system, and you hit the emergency stop and you stop it and everything else, and then you look at the operator, and the operator says, "Okay, so we're going to get a few call-ups today," because people will dial in and complain, "Oh, my water tastes funny," and so every now and then. Actually, on a water pipeline, what happens after a while is that they dump lime into the water, and what that does is it lowers the pH because limes are.
Yeah.
Anyway, point is that it builds up over a long period of time on the inside of the pipe. But if you put too much flow through that pipe, then it'll literally come off in chunks, and when it comes off in chunks, and those chunks tumble along, break apart, and they make the water turn white. So instead of it being clear, the water goes this really white, sort of like milky white color, and it has a little bit of a strange taste to it.
Jesus, that's because it breaks off in chunks and then...
But it's lime. Yeah, lime won't hurt you. Not in those sorts of concentrations. Lime's not going to hurt you. It's just that it tastes a little bit funny and it looks wrong. I mean,
that's the thing. But okay, but you're saying there's nothing wrong with that kind of water, right? I mean,
no.
When it's just lime. I did not know that.
Yeah, I'd rather drink that than drink water out of a stream. God only knows what's in that. But seriously.
Wow. Okay.
So there's this one time I was doing some control modifications on a valve, and unfortunately, the previous engineer that had been working on it, because I'd sort of taken over, he was on holidays, and I was told, "Oh, John, you got to go out and commission this." I'm like, "Oh, really? Okay, great." So I went out and I had a look at this, and unfortunately, he hadn't set one of the values. The valve cranked open to absolute maximum, as in fully open, and this thing had 100 meters of head pressure behind it. So the water went literally from about 300 litres a second up to about 800 litres a second in the space of about 10 seconds. And that turns out that is not actually a good thing. And anyway, so for the rest of that day, the whole pipeline, the water had gone a little bit milky white. Anyway, so the funny part of it was I didn't realise this until, of course, I go home. And I go home and my water supply for my house actually comes from the pipeline, comes off the pipeline that I was working on. So guess what colour the water was when I got home? And I sort of said to my wife, honey, I think I may have turned the water white. Anyway, she thought that was hilarious.
That is hilarious.
But anyway.
Okay. Geez, I just learned about 7 things in there. Yeah, okay, awesome. So, how do we transition into podcasting now? Why do we know each other? I'm going to ask you that question.
I'm going to blame this. There's this strange guy that does a lot of philosophical discussion called Zapiski, and and when he was on this podcast called Storming Mortal, I thought, hey, this is like a heavy metal podcast or something. I don't know. So anyway, so I have a listen, and I've listened to every episode since. So that's how I know you.
Yeah.
Next question: how do you know me?
Well, I think the answer is pretty much the same. Although I don't know. I think it's actually probably because of Ben and when I was on pulling the string and stuff. I think that's what I think that's sort of how I found Pragmatic. I think.
Okay.
Like I don't even keep track anymore at this point. You know.
Yeah, it's been a while. 8 months now, something like that. 7 months.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. And it still like messes with my mind that I know people from Australia. Like that's just that's still weird to me.
Yeah,
because before we get into podcasting and all of that stuff, and we're gonna talk about shows. I don't want to talk about the mechanics of it because that's boring.
Yep.
But before we do that the thing you talked with Jason, I'm gonna put that Pragmatic episode into the show notes. But
sure,
like how do you see that? Because you're the guy from Australia, and when you touch the whole tech corner of the internet, it's predominantly Americans, right?
Sure.
I mean, that's sort of how I see it. So, like, what's that like for you with the time difference and everything else?
See, the thing is, we talk about this on and off, the whole time zone problem. And I mean, it is a problem. I even did, I touched on it briefly on a couple episodes of Pragmatic now. It's just, for me, it's something that I've already been dealing with before podcasting. So if you go back to when I worked at Nortel back in 97, when I was there, we were working across multiple offices. Predominantly, we were working between because I was living in Calgary, or based in Calgary predominantly, although I spent a bit of time living in Ottawa and a little bit in Richardson in Texas. But the truth was that there were different time zones there, plus we had an office in Maidenhead in England. So of course I was calling home to, my family back in Australia at the time. So I got very used to getting my head around time zones. Before podcasting even existed, it was one of those things that, you could make a phone call to the other side of the world. It was not a new thing. It's just now that more and more people are getting involved with podcasting, and they realize the whole issue of trying to line up a time. It's annoying. Because I sort of reached this realization that if I want to have conversations with these people and talk about the things that I want to talk about with them, I'm going to have to get up at stupid o'clock and have that discussion. And you know what? That's fine. It's not my fault. I say it's not my fault. I guess really it isn't my fault that I was born in Australia, that I now live in Australia. I mean, I lived in North America for 2.5 years. If I was podcasting then, probably would have been a bit easier. But, hey, I wasn't. So... I did choose to come back to Australia when everything went south at Nortel, but the truth is that, the world is the way it is, you can't change that. And besides, there's also people that are really weird and, they're up at like 2 or 3 in the morning like Guy English, so, go Guy.
That is true. Yeah, and Joe Steele.
Yeah.
I don't know when that guy sleeps.
Yeah, and Zach's another example. I mean, I don't get it. They have this weird sleeping pattern. For me, I traditionally have gone to sleep at night and woken up in the morning. That was until I became a podcaster, and now I don't know anymore.
Yeah. I can totally relate to that. But in terms of like the audience, how do you see that? Who is your stuff for? Do you know what I mean? Like, when
Yeah.
you do it, because, like, who is it for? Like, do you have an image in your head of the people you'd like it for to listen to your stuff?
Yeah, I sort of. I don't. I'll be honest. I don't overthink that, and the reason that I don't is, well, like I said, I lived there for 2.5 years. When I was living in Calgary, I worked with a lot of Americans, and of course, oddly, when I was working in Texas, I worked with a lot of Americans. Yeah, isn't it funny that? And then when I was working in Australia, my first job out of university, a company in Sydney called Com10, and my boss was from Boston, and then when I was working at Boeing, we had several Americans. Where I currently work, there's several Americans I'm working with. I've been working with Americans on and off for a very long time, and I really don't. I just don't see any kind of nationality thing. It's like,
You see, but that's the interesting part to me, because I think, like, that sort of, even for me with my English side, right, that sort of goes away. Like, I thought that would be harder to achieve, if you know what I mean, like, to just sort of just think of it, the internet as the place where this stuff is,
Yeah.
I don't know. I just always figured it'd be tougher, but I'm seeing this more and more. Like, people just put stuff out. I guess it has to be in English if you want to, do stuff for the Western audience. But that's as far as it goes. And I always figured there'd be more barriers somehow. And like, I just get people talking like you even. You just like we're talking, and to me it still feels sort of wrong. Basically.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah,
is what it is.
Yeah, it is.
It's crazy in a good way, but I mean, the thing is, you look at the world and how much of it speaks English either as their first or their second language, and it enables so many things. I absolutely love the internet. I think it's incredible, and the fact that you and I are even able to do this at all is extremely cool. So, the other piece that occurs to me, though, when you ask me the question about how do I see my audience, is I will try to temper things like temperatures and distances and weights, and try and give them in both values. So I'll give it in kilograms and pounds if I've prepared well. You can usually tell when I've run out of time preparing, because I'll only quote them in one set of imperial or metric units. And you can nod knowingly to yourself as in the audience as you're listening and thinking, yeah, John didn't get enough prep time on this one. So anyway.
Well, I think you should just do it in metrics, because,
Yeah, well, you would say that, wouldn't you? But,
yeah, well, yeah. Well, it's the one that makes sense. Right?
Yeah, well, you're right. It does make sense. I mean, honestly.
It's the pound thing and the ounces, and it's all made up. It's
like base 10. It's base 10, guys. Come on. It's so simple. Just move the decimal point. As soon as you start doing this crazy stuff with, anyway, but it's fun. It's fun. But you know what? I don't mind, because like I said, when I was over there, Canada's this weird mixture of the two. So the distances are in kilometres, but the weights of a lot of things are in pounds. So you'll go and you'll get butter, and the butter's like 454 grams. And you're like, that's an extremely weird number. Okay. And it turns out that's X number of pounds. And I'm like, oh, right, now I get it. Yeah, and the drinks will be they'll be like 330 mils as opposed to 375 mils. So 375 mils is like 3/8 of a liter or whatever that is, I think. And 330 mils is I don't know, is it 20 fluid ounces or not 20, 8 or 12 fluid ounces, something like that.
Yeah, I think it's 8.
I think it's 8. Yeah, you're right, it's 8. So, it's just crazy stuff like that. So it's like it'll be in metric, but it's a crazy metric figure because it's based on the North American size. And all they do is they'll make it in a common factory that can be sent anywhere, and the label will be written in both values. And it's a cost saving. At least that was my theory anyway. I don't really have any evidence of that, but that's what I think it must do. I don't know. That's what I'd do.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's the one that makes sense.
Yeah,
because over here, the equivalent of that over here is because we're in this weird situation in Slovenia, because we're actually Central Europe, but we're associated with Eastern Europe mostly.
Yeah.
So the big brands, like, they have factories for like Western Europe and for Eastern Europe, right? Mm-hmm. So you get products that have the labeling on it. It's like usually it's Slovene, and then it's like French and English and all of the Western European countries. And then you have the same product just from a different distributor, right? But it's from the Eastern European plant. Right. So you'll have, Slovene and Serbian and Croatian and Polish and stuff like that. And there's actually a difference, because there's this big thing where, Nutella, the chocolatey spread thing.
Hazelnut spread, yeah.
Yeah. So that the Western European one is better than the Eastern European one. And That sounds wrong, but it actually is. Like, I've tasted both at the same time. And, like, there's people that think it's just in your head, but it's actually a different product. It's the labeling is the same, just the languages are different on there. Because that's the weird thing here, yeah. I don't know why I told you that just then, but that's always...
Because you like Nutella?
Oh,
Who doesn't like Nutella, right?
Yeah, I've stopped eating it during the winter. Because it's just pointless. It's just during, like, it's, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I just eat the whole thing, and it's just, it gets weird.
Yeah, it's a bit, it gets weird, yep. God. Oh, dear. All right, fair enough. Because you're one of these people that sits there with a spoon and literally just eats it with a spoon, right? That's what you do.
Yeah, I'm one of the, That's why I don't want to buy it, yeah.
You're like my wife. Gee, she does that. I'm like, come on. It's supposed to go on your bread. You just get a knife and you put it on the bread and then you eat it like you're supposed to. All right.
Yeah, I know. Again, that's why I don't buy it. Okay, we're talking about Nutella now, which is, fine.
That's fine.
No, that's fine.
No problem.
Okay, so let's talk about Pragmatic for a second, because you do this show where you explain stuff like you did at the beginning of this show.
Right.
That I had no earthly idea of how that stuff works. Mm-hmm. So just pitch the show. So when people hear this, if they haven't listened to it, I'm like specifically talking about people in Slovenia because I think it's a great show, but like just pitch it for what it is, and then I have a couple of questions. But just go.
All right. Well, what I try to do with Pragmatic is I'll take a topic, usually a technical topic or a topic that affects technology in some way, and I like to break it down and try and go through each of its components and explain the reason why it is the way it is, and try and come out of it with something practical that people can take away from the podcast and apply in their life every day. Sometimes it's obvious, like, for example, in the battery problem, I looked at solar energy, for example, solar power and alternative energy. That's something you could go away from and say, right, you know what, I'm going to go through and I'm going to check how much power everything consumes in my house, and I'm going to get solar panels put on my roof or whatever. That's something practical and actionable. Another one's a little bit less tangible, but most recently, though, I had Jason Snell guested on the show, and we talked about writing, and there's a lot of really good stuff in there. Jason and I went through regarding how to get your stuff published if you want to get into tech writing, and good practices for writing. So I try to have something. What I didn't want when I did Pragmatic, I didn't want to have a show where I just complained about everything and that was the end of the show. I wanted to actually have a point at the end of it and say, well, you know what, this is how you could use this. This is how you can apply this. This is been worth your time. That's what I want to do. Whether I succeed or not, I don't know, but that's what I try to do.
Well, yeah, you do succeed, because like the memory episode was just how did that come about? Like you have a weird, strange range of topics. You do know that, right?
Yeah, I do. And the reason that it's if you look closely and you think about what other people talk about on tech podcasts, I specifically don't cover the topics that most other people cover. And the reason that I do that is because I feel like everyone else has done them to death. I mean, how many times I steer clear of things like current events and Apple released X today. I may mention them in passing, but that's never the main topic of the episode. It'll always be something related to it, but not specifically that, because there's that many people out there talking about it. Do I really need to talk about, the smartwatch that just came out or something? To me, I want to cover the stuff that no one else is talking about, or very few others are talking about. And there are engineering podcasts out there, but the problem that I've got with a lot of them is that they're all very, inside baseball. The entry level to understanding them is very high. Don't get me wrong, they're great for me, certainly knowing the lingo, but I don't want to produce a podcast like that because, that has a very narrow audience, and frankly, that doesn't really, all I'm doing is I'm talking to people that already know what I'm talking about, as opposed to, talking to people that are interested to know what I'm talking about, but ordinarily they couldn't listen. There's another podcast I listen to called The Engineering Commons, and it's wonderful. But I mean, if you're not an engineer, try listening to it. I mean, they talk about all sorts of stuff in there that's very, very technical, but it's which I love. But I would say that the entry level is much higher. So I try to keep it at a level that's not quite that intense, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, yeah, because you try and make it for, normal people like me, not somebody with an engineering degree,
Yeah, well, that's right. I mean, I don't want the entry level to be you must have an engineering degree to understand what I'm talking about. I just don't. I want if that ever happens, then it's time to end the show. So,
yeah. Well, I have a political science degree, and I love your show. So
thank you. Thank you.
You have that going for you.
Cool. All right.
Yeah, not just a political science degree. The actual path in there was public administration and policy analysis. So that sounds fancy.
It sounds different. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why I have a sort of tech podcast and why I'm a tech writer. Nobody does, really.
I was going to ask that. Shouldn't you be like analyzing some kind of I don't know. What do you do?
Yeah.
So now I'm in your shoes, right? You're like, what do you do? Who are you and what do you do? And I'm like, hang on. I thought I knew who you were.
Yeah, no, I am many things at this point, I think. But
okay.
I'm the online editor of I guess a political magazine now.
Okay.
Which also has the same publisher, also owns the tech magazine that I write for.
Okay.
And I do many podcasts.
How many? I've always wondered, and I never counted.
Well, it's 3, I guess.
Oh, okay.
But the network I run has 8 shows on it, but I am not on the other 5 shows.
Yeah,
well, I've been a guest on a couple of them, but yeah.
Yeah, and based on everything that I've understood, when we talk on Skype, you're actually, because Slovenia is in relative terms a smaller area to cover. You tend to interview people face to face rather than via Skype. That's generally the case as well? Is that true?
Yeah. I think like the ones that I've done over Skype was basically you guys, the foreigners, and and a couple of guys in Slovenia that I knew had a mic and stuff,
Sure.
that it actually would sound good.
Well, funny thing is here, I've never actually interviewed someone face to face. Mind you, none of my podcasts are actually interview podcasts, but you know what I mean? I've never actually done a podcast recording with someone in the same room as me. So that would be like completely weird to me. Hang on a minute. Should I look at you right now? What's appropriate?
Oh, it's actually better in a couple of ways, but
sure.
It's easier over here because we're small,
Well, that's fine. That's good. It's all good.
Well, it's not a bad thing.
We have a small population, but we're spread everywhere, so over in a ridiculously large area. So it's a different kind of problem.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about Australia actually, because I do this thing on this show where I just talk to people about the places where they live. Because I think I get and even my listeners get more from somebody who just lives there. And is not the vice president of the tourist board or whatever.
That's it.
Yeah. So okay, this is a weird question I have, but I actually have it written down, so just bear with me. The elections over there, because we just had an election here, right?
Oh, yeah.
And we had really low turnout and stuff because it was an extraordinary, I don't know what it's called, but they came early, the elections came early.
Oh, yeah, right.
So they were during the summer and, people have holidays and stuff, and it was really low turnout. And you guys have mandatory voting, right?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so how does that work in practice if you actually didn't show up to vote? What would actually happen?
Okay, well, it's pretty straightforward, really. When you turn 18... so when you're born, you get a birth certificate that says, hey, you were born, and this is your name and date of birth, and these were your doctors, and this is where it was, and blah, 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 all that other rubbish. So they know who you are, okay? They can find you, I guess. Anyway, so I'm making it sound like a Gestapo thing, but look, the truth is that, they keep track of who everyone is. So when you turn 18, then you are required to vote. And once you register to vote, your name goes on a magic list. Now, if you don't register, you get into a lot of trouble because they can track you down, and they will track you down. So you register, and once you're on that list, it's a simple thing of you show up at any old voting booth that you would like. And I say voting booth, it's so they'll use churches or community halls or schools. Typically, a lot of schools, public schools, and you'll go in there and go into a little cardboard voting box that they put together like a little Lego set. Anyway, and you vote. But in order to get the voting slip, you have to go up to the front and say your name and usually show your driver's license to prove you are who you say you are. And then
but you can go but you can go into any like voting station. You don't have to. It doesn't have to be the one where you live. Like you can go to any of them.
Well, yes, you can. You're supposed to go to the one in your local area, however, and if you don't, then they mark your name off differently. But if you're in your local area, then they'll have a list of everyone within a certain number of 100 kilometres or whatever of your location on a massive list. And so they'll literally go through and they'll get a ruler out and they'll put a line through your name and say, right, you've voted. Here's your you haven't voted, but you've shown up. You're crossed off the list, and here's a piece of paper you can now fill out and vote. So you go and do that, and you go into a booth and you fill in the form, then you fold it up and tuck it into the box as you walk out. It's anonymous insofar as they can't match up your name with what you voted. However, obviously they know that you showed up to vote. So, and that's how they figure out if you didn't. So if you don't go to any voting booth and don't get your name marked off or written down or noted that you were there, then they'll go through that list, they'll go through the registered voter list, and they will figure out that you didn't show up, and they will fine you, as in they'll find you and they'll fine you. So it's both, and then you're up for a few $100 fine or so on. Yeah, and
so it's a few hundred Australian dollars. That's the fine.
Yeah, I think it's a few $100. I've never been fined. Okay, I'm a good boy. I always vote. But yeah, people do this thing. It's a silent protest. It's a bit sad and pathetic, to be perfectly honest. But they get a kick out of it, and hey, that's the nature of freedom. People can do what they want, even if it's like pointless and stupid. So here we go. What they do is, I don't really want to be here, hands on hips. So I'm going to go and vote invalid. So it says tick one box, and there's 5 boxes. It says tick one box, let's say. So they'll go and tick every box, or they won't tick any boxes at all, or they'll put crosses in the boxes, or they'll write a diatribe or a poem or something, and then they'll submit that. So they've essentially showed up, got their name crossed off so they wouldn't get fined, and then did not vote a valid vote. And then they walk out again. And I'm like, why? You can't make me vote. And I'm like, well, they did. They made you show up. They made you walk there. You're just the idiot that didn't fill it in properly. But, anyway.
No, that's so awesome, because there's this whole every time we have a low turnout here, right? That's the conversation. Like at some point, there's a guy on the news saying we should have mandatory voting, and then there's another guy that says, well, yeah, that's fine, but we should the one of the boxes you should be able to tick is basically the I don't give an F.
Yeah,
box.
That's it. I choose not to participate.
Yeah, basically, and that's that's basically what you described, right? Just somebody writing a poem on the thing and just doing that. But seriously, that's why I wanted to talk to you about this, because you actually have that there, and stuff. You guys are okay, right? I mean, it's
thank you.
No, but I think was there ever a debate? And I'm sorry for putting this on you because you're just an Australian, But was there ever a debate there where mandatory voting was sort of, was considered too creepy with the government, like you said, having a list and stuff, and, basically making you do your duty, I guess, democratic duty. Was there ever a debate about that?
I'm not aware of one. So far as I know, it's the way it's always been, but then I would, for my entire lifespan, it's nearly 38 years now, that's all I've known. So there may well have been a time where that was not the case, but I don't believe it. I don't believe so. I believe that since we've had elections that they've been mandatory. So at least that's what I believe. And I mean, there's been all sorts of debate / you'd call it a referendum, but wouldn't that be hilarious? Here, I'm going to hold a referendum that's not mandatory about whether or not referendum should be mandatory. Yeah, that could work. No. So but anyway, now seriously though, they'll have referendums on topics like, do you want daylight saving? And then you say no, and then they say that's too bad, we're going to put it in anyway.
I think that's the same everywhere. We've had a bunch of them, and over here with the referendums, since they're not mandatory, 9% of the voting public actually shows up.
Yeah,
they're just pointless.
Yeah. So what they do with referendums here is they'll tack them onto an election. So if there's a local government election or a state government election or a federal election, they'll hold off the referendum and they'll just simply tack it on the end so that you don't have to go especially. And if you look at it, it works out, you go to vote roughly once a year. So, they
you see, yeah. But over here, there's a new law that basically makes that impossible because there's a quorum now for the referendums because the political parties basically just use them for, political points. They just put stupid questions up there because
Okay.
You just needed, I don't know, like 40,000 signatures to get a referendum or something like that. I'm not sure about the exact number, but it's a low threshold, right?
Okay.
So now there's a quorum, so a certain number of people actually need to show up and vote for the thing you're referenduming, right?
Okay.
And because that's the case, you can't do it at the same time as the election, so it has to be a separate thing, which costs more.
Oh, man,
right?
that sucks.
It's just, but it's better because now there's less of a chance that they'll actually go through. Because before we had some really stupid ones, right?
Well, you can only get Nutella from Western Europe because it's better.
Yeah. Well,
that makes sense. That's sensible.
Yeah. That would be an awesome box to tick, basically.
Yeah, well, get on it then.
Yeah,
petition your local member or whatever they do. Whatever you do that, these are over there. Sorry.
That would actually not be that out of place. Probably, I think.
No, you're starting to worry me. I was kidding, and you'll know. Well, hang on, that could work.
Yeah, don't put ideas into my head, John. Just don't. Yeah.
All right. I'll behave.
Okay, so about which part of Australia are you from? Because the closest thing I could find of any note was Brisbane.
No, you got it right first time. Brisbane. We call it Brisbane. Yeah, a lot of people call it Brisbane, and I understand why, because if you take the Bris off the front, it looks like Bane out of
Batman.
God, Batman. Yeah, thank you. So, God, and I'm not going to do a Bane voice. So, yeah. Sometimes, no, I'm not. Anyway, all right. So I live in. No, I'm not. Moving on. I grew up in a town called Rockhampton, which is literally a small country town. And I say small country town. I mean, it had about 55,000 people when I was living there. So if you call that a country town, I mean, you drive west for about 6-7 hours from Rockhampton, and you get to a place called Barcaldine. And out of Barcaldine, they've got about 300 people. That's a country town to me. But now I live in Brisbane. Brisbane has about 1.5 million people within the Brisbane city limits, and it's up to about 3 million if you include what they call Greater Brisbane, which includes the Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast, and that's a fair bit more, but it's a much bigger area. So anyway, point is that from a Brisbane point of view, Rockhampton is a small country town. It's all relative, but in any case, I live on the east coast of Australia, like the vast majority. I think it's something stupid like 85% or something of Australia's population live on the east coast, and and it'd be almost 100% if it wasn't for Perth on the other side, because Perth's just got over 1 million people living in it. But apart from that, there's nothing in Western Australia. Like, no one else lives over there. There's hardly anyone. So,
why?
Well, because there's nothing there.
Yeah, but there's a coast there, right?
Oh, so sure, and it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. But so I did some work at a little place called Exmouth, which I challenge you to find that on a map. But anyway, it's in Western Australia. It's around about the Tropic of Capricorn or thereabouts, anyway. And if you find on a globe, and as we were flying in, because you're flying in these old turboprop Hawker de Havillands. And as you're flying in, relatively not that high, because it's a turboprop, it's not a jet. So you're flying in, and you're not too high up above the ground, really. And you see the beautiful waves of sand dunes and the desert, and it's a red desert, and it's breathtaking, but it's barren. And then you see the colors change, and it's now a far more golden sand or a white sand, and you realize, oh, okay. That's the ocean. So the ocean literally backs on to a desert. And
oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So and there's vast sections of Western Australia that are just desert. It's a huge area. This is desert. So but where the money is in Western Australia is in the mining, because there's a lot of iron ore, and they'll extract the iron ore from the hills and they'll ship it. Well, they'll take it by train down to the coast, put it on a boat, and then send it to China usually, because China buys the majority of our raw materials. And then they melt it down and then make crummy steel, and we buy the crummy steel back from them. So hey presto, But anyway, whatever. Look, that's economics, right? And for whatever reason, it's more expensive to make steel in Australia because people demand higher salaries, and therefore So in the past, like you go back probably 30, 40 years, and that was the other way around. So Australia would make all of its own, steel, or if not all of it, most of it. Whereas now, that's not the case anymore. So anyway, but that's it really. There's nothing else attracting people except the minerals. So, whereas with Perth, it's in the south, it is the southwest corner of the state, pretty much, on the Swan River. And it's beautiful and green, but it is the exception. So that whole corner, that whole southwest corner of Australia has got a beautiful coastline and nice forests, and it's beautiful, temperate temperature's lovely. However, you go much north of there, and it's just a little bit barren. So there's nothing else there really, just desert. I mean, there's the wheat belt. Okay, you got big, vast, flat areas where they grow wheat before it turns into a desert. But frankly,
yeah, that's not much.
That's not much of an improvement in terms of tourism. It's like, here, come to Western Australia and look at the wheat fields. Yeah.
Yeah, that's on the CNN commercial.
Yeah, that's it. It's whoever the tourism board loses their job if they do that. But anyway.
Okay, then one more thing that I actually found from Australia, which I thought was hilarious, and then I've sort of never seen it again. It's the Chaser.
The Chaser's war on everything.
Yeah. Okay. Do people actually watch that over there? Well, I'm just asking.
The quote, the people watch, end quote. I'm not one of those, the people that watch it. I find it to be an infuriating show.
Okay, we should explain what it is.
Well, what is it, though? It's a bunch of guys running around annoying people, I think. Isn't that what it is?
Well, yeah, but they do have their moments, right?
Yeah, I know they have their moments, but I find it's like... okay, so imagine this is the weird part. Okay, so there's a state-run media section. Now, that's the ABC, the Australian Broadcasting Corporation. It's analogous to the BBC, from the UK, the British Broadcasting Corporation. So and when I say it's analogous, it's kind of like a carbon copy. So they get all their funding from taxpayers' money, and they have produce all their own content and so on. Okay, nothing really extraordinary.
We have the same model, so yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So there you go. Of course, you also have commercial stations that are doing the whole commercial thing, and they'll run ads on their networks and so on to raise their money to produce shows and buy shows. Almost all of them from America, and so on. But the point is that the Chasers' War on Everything is a show that's from the ABC, and the concept, as I understand it, and you've got to realise I've only watched a handful of episodes because I couldn't stand it. So if I mangle this, please email Ange. Don't email me. So I shamelessly ripped that off Marco because, well, apparently it doesn't actually work. So anyway, you say people don't email me, and instantly they think I need to email you now.
Yeah.
Anyway, never mind. So the Chasers' War is a bunch of people that go around and harass or sort of get in the face of a bunch of other people, and they'll crash like certain events and go up to. They have no problem walking right up to the Prime Minister and just asking them insane questions and pranking. Sometimes they'll do pranks on some people, and it's all filmed and then goes onto the TV. And I don't know. I don't get it. I don't like that sort of thing. But whatever. To each their own.
Well, yeah. So you're the guy that likes Crocodile Dundee. That's the other Australian thing.
Hey, what's wrong? I like Crocodile Dundee's funny. But see, the thing is, because in Rockhampton we were about 2 city blocks away from the bush, and I used to go bushwalking all the time. It'd be this thing you do on the weekend. Get your backpack, put some food in it, and a drink and compass, and just go. This is before mobile phones. This is before any of that stuff. And when I got a bit older, I carried around a CB radio in case I got into trouble. But and I used to just go, and I love watching the first 2 Crocodile Dundee movies. Anyway, for the portions that they're in Australia, it's brilliant because it's that's my backyard, and it's not often that you see the backyard, my backyard in Australia on film. You just don't. Certainly not on a popular movie like Crocodile Dundee was. Mind you, it's getting on a bit now. Jesus, what, 25?
Oh, more. Yeah, 25 easily.
Yeah.
It was the 80s, right? So it was.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
right,
I think it was the 80s, but not far back. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway.
So thank you, John, for that, extensive Australia.
Yeah, no problem. No problem.
That should be a pamphlet. Like that.
You reckon? Okay.
Yeah, I think so. With the don't go to the west part of the country.
If you're going to go to the west, all I'm saying is all there is Perth. Okay, unless you like wheat fields and desert. But if I had to recommend a part of Australia to go to that's beautiful, that I think is really beautiful, I'd suggest Tasmania because. Yeah, it's a beautiful, much cooler climate, and it's just beautiful forests everywhere, and it's not busy. It's the capital city of Hobart is it's a little bit bigger than Rockhampton, but it's just it's not a hectic pace. The rush hour doesn't last long. It's just it's nice. Whereas Brisbane's freeways and tunnels everywhere, bridges and massive train network, and which I'm riding on every bloody day pretty much, and lots of people, noisy. So I live out away from that. I've got an acreage north of Brisbane, so about 56 kilometres north of the CBD in Brisbane. So we're a fair distance out, and it's lovely and quiet up here, but I pay for that because it's with a long commute.
Yeah, anyway. How long is your commute?
It's an hour and a half each way.
That's insane.
Yeah, it is insane.
That's over here you can, well, not the whole country, but like 3/4 of it. Like that's it. It's on the highway. It's an hour and a half. That's pretty much it.
If I drove my car into the city at stupid o'clock, like I'm going to do today, actually, by the way. I'm driving in today just for a change. It's like the first time in a month I've driven in. But anyway, I'm going to drive in. I can do the trip in 48 minutes. So the problem is the public transport. So the public transport stops at too many bloody stations. So, there used to be a Super Express that ran, and they changed the timetable, and that just makes me angry, and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, whatever. I chose to live this far out, I keep telling myself, so I've got to stop complaining at some point in my life.
However bad your train situation is, the trains over here are probably worse. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
Now we can move to your hardware and software.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The trains just don't show up? Is that it?
Well, no. Well, they do show up. The timing is sort of. No,
but I mean, with Slovenia, is it small enough that you could just walk everywhere? I'm being.
No, but that's actually we like the highway system is pretty much built now. Right, the last 10 years, we built this huge cross across the whole country, the whole chicken. Right, so because it looks like a chicken.
Yeah, I know. So, I've been listening.
Yeah. So it's the car is now the mode of transportation basically. Because from where I am in Ljubljana, that's center almost, right, of the country.
Yep.
You can go to the mountains and it's 40 minutes, and to the seaside and it's 50 minutes, and that's it. Nice. Like you don't need to, that's the perk. Basically, you have everything about an hour away. Everything, like the flatlands, the mountains, the seaside, like the forests, everything's an hour away.
Well, I'm kind of similar actually where I live, because I can drive for about 40 minutes, and I'm up into the mountains around the Dagula range, and it's just lovely up there. And it's in summer, it's a great place to go because it's usually about maybe 5 degrees cooler up in the mountains than it is down at where I am. I'm not that much above sea level, but there's no direct road to get me straight out there if I were to go straight to the east. So I have to drive a little bit north or a little bit south to get to the coast. But it's about 25 minutes drive, and I'm at an ocean beach. So depending on which way I go, depending on which way I go, I can have a sheltered beach, or I can go for a beach that has waves that you can surf in. Not that I can surf, but if I ever wanted to take it up, I suppose I could. That's not going to happen, though. No.
But you're Australian. You're supposed to surf, right? That's the stereotype. Yeah,
I know, and I'm supposed to know how to swim as well, but I have some kind of weird buoyancy thing where I can't float, so that doesn't work for me.
I'm not going to.
I don't know. I have to go to the Dead. One of these days, I'm going to go to the Dead Sea to see if I can actually float. Apparently, everyone can, and that'll be like thumbs up. Finally, well, it's on my bucket list. I'm going to defeat my negative buoyancy. I'm going to do this.
Awesome. Okay, so John, your hardware.
Okay.
And your software. Let's start with your hardware.
Okay. So I have a 2012 MacBook Air. which I use for both work and for home. It's my own laptop. The company does provide a Dell Latitude piece of garbage, which, it sits on my desk at work in case I ever actually need it, which is practically never, and I'm totally comfortable with that situation. So, yeah, it's a 13-inch MacBook Air. It's 2 gigahertz on Core i7, and it's got 8 gig of RAM and a 256 gig SSD. And apart from the battery life sort of getting a little bit worse, it's about almost 2 years old now, or thereabouts. So the battery's sort of getting a little bit worse for wear, but it still lasts the duration of the train easily, because I get to use it on the train for 45 minutes to an hour each way every day, and it holds up just fine for that, even if I'm doing, because I'll often edit podcasts on the train, and it holds up fine doing all that stuff. So. Okay, so that's the laptop. I also have a Retina iPad Mini,
Nice.
which I love to use. It's beautiful. I've had an iPad Air, and I've also had an iPad 1, and my kids have iPad 2s predominantly. And honestly, I love the Retina iPad Mini. I wasn't sold on the Retina originally. I thought, who really cares about that? And then I saw a photograph on it, as in a high res picture, and that I'd taken on my iPhone. And when I saw that, and it just that was sort of the moment for me that it clicked that Retina actually mattered at that moment. Because up until that moment, if you're just displaying text, if it's not as fuzzy, I don't really give a crap. I was like, I can read what the letters say. That's what I need. But then I saw a photograph on it, and I'm like, yes, okay, I get it. I like the Retina now. So, and finally, my phone is an iPhone 5S. And, it's the gold one, and I stood in line, and I didn't get one. And it took me weeks to get one, but I finally got one. And now, of course, they're common as mud. And the whole thing is pointless, but never mind. I love my phone, so there you go. So those are my 3 bits of hardware that I use. They're all Apple, and Apple must love me because I've gone and I've given them so much of my money. So go Apple, I guess.
Okay, and then your software, let's do the iPad, because that's what I'm predominantly interested in. The stuff you use on your iPad, the apps.
Okay, well, the app that I live in the most on the iPad, to be honest, when I'm doing. When I'm working, most of the time lately, I've been working on show notes for Pragmatic, because I'll do that on the train as well. Anyway, so I live in Pages, and I used to use IA Writer, but once Pages sort of became syncing across the different platforms with iCloud Sync and everything, and that started to work reliably, I switched to Pages and never looked back. So I use Pages predominantly. I use Tweetbot. For Twitter, because I switch between my devices, so the syncing between them of my position is absolutely crucial. I also have a newspaper app for the local newspaper, which I actually pay a subscription for, so I can actually download and read the newspaper on my iPad, which is far more handy than you might think. I'm just looking at my home screen and seeing what else I've got on here. I unfortunately have Facebook to keep an eye on what my wife is saying about me on Facebook, which is generally positive, generally. Those are the main ones, really. I got 1Password as well, which, of course, and those are the big ones. So that's the
Okay. Okay. And then my last question, which is always the same. If you had to pick one physical thing that's not a person, which, makes sense, that made an impact on your life, or, you felt like it was made for you, what would that be?
Well, because I've been listening to this podcast, I knew that question was coming, so I've had a chance to think about it. And it's actually it's a difficult question, and it's an interesting question because it's not one you ever really get asked. But if I had
That's why I ask it. Basically.
I know, that's so good. So, okay, if I had to pick one thing, I would say it would be my baby grand piano, which was a Kawai GE1A, which was a 5'1" baby grand. It was ebony with. It was just beautiful to play. I say was past tense. I don't have it anymore. So when I lived in Calgary, I was fortunate in a lot of senses. Well, oh god, that's going to come out really badly. Hang on, let me rephrase that for a second. Before I had my beautiful children, and I had disposable income, I had time on my hands as well. So you put money and time on your hands into it, and you either I had time for a hobby, and my hobby was learning the piano. So I picked up this piano at a sale It was an ex-demo, display model. And, so I set about to learn the piano. I've been playing on a digital piano, which I still have, a Yamaha Clavinova model. I forget the model number off the top of my head. And it's a full-size keyboard, full-size digital piano with weighted keys, but it's nothing compared to a grand. Once you play a grand piano, it's hard to go back to anything else. The key weighting is just beautiful. And, I would just spend hours and hours and hours every week just playing the piano. And when I left to come back to Australia, it was extremely emotional for me because I couldn't bring in the piano with me. And because, it would have cost more to ship it. Oh, okay, maybe it wouldn't have, but it would have cost a heck of a lot of money to ship it home. And the climate is so different, so people don't realize that, a grand piano or any piano, the soundboard is essentially, if you're in a dry climate, then the piano should stay in a dry climate, and if it doesn't, it needs to be in a temperature and more, just as importantly, a humidity-controlled environment. Otherwise, the soundboard will swell, the moisture will get into the wood, and it changes the characteristics of the soundboard. So if you were to get the same piano but built for Australia, because the majority of people in Australia will live by the coastline where the humidity is much, much higher. If you take a piano from a dry climate into a moist climate, then that will very quickly destroy the piano. So I knew that I couldn't take it with me, and that was very difficult to let go of that. So, and I often look back wistfully and think about and wish that I had another one. Maybe one day I will, but it's going to be a while, I would expect.
That is a awesome answer, and I guess that explains the what do you have, Mozart, or who do you have for the pragmatic song? I guess.
Oh, that's
the intro.
Yeah, that's Beethoven. That's Furley.
Oh, Beethoven. I saw. Yeah, classic. I just know what the Samuel Barber Adagio for strings. I love that one, and that's pretty much it. Cool. John, this is it. I think. Yeah,
this
is. Yeah, that you've been on Storming Mortar or Apparatus, if for the Slovenian listeners. So
oh, okay, cool.
That's what the show's called in Slovenia. So,
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you, man. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, and no problem at all. Thanks for having me on.
Tole je bila 82. epizoda Apparatusa. John je na Twitterju pod afna John, Chidgey. Jaz sem na Twitterju afna anzet, tako da mi lahko tam težite ali pa še mail pošljete na anze@apparatus.si. Feedbacka sem vedno vesel. Naprej grem pa še enkrat ful hvala vsem, ki ste že podprli mrežo Apparatus, ker zdaj je to že 8 oddaj, tako da vsak evro prav pride. Če bi pa to radi naredili, greste pa na apparatus.si/podpri. Hvala. Evo, to je do naslednjič to. Hvala, da ste poslušali. Čau.